Welcome to our present state versus history on speaker. Here we are focused on the current events of our culture through the principles of our history, trying to make sense of the culture and the mindset of today. I am your host, Ray Mayfield.
Well, okay, folks, here we are again back on the pod. It's Friday morning, the 28th of October. It's kind of a morning deal for me. I've had a rough night last night, so I'll just kind of apologize ahead of time for my mind wandering or what have you. I don't know if this is going to be informative or if it's going to be a rant, but we went to a town meeting, Republican meeting down here in McDonald County last night, dealing with some of this stuff that's going to be on the ballot at our next election here in a couple weeks. So I'm going to deal with some of the issues there and just try to put some information out so that you can have what you need to make up your mind what you want to do. Part of the fundamental problem we have in our constitutional system today is we have representatives that don't understand that their job is to represent the public. It's not their job to sell the public on the ideas that they have already made up. But this is not a new concept. This is not a new problem or a new error in philosophy. This started way back with Teddy Roosevelt. Everybody talks about Teddy Roosevelt and he's a great president and yada, yada, yada. But, there's some things there that came into place. Mr. Roosevelt, his idea of the presidency was that he could do anything that the Constitution didn't specifically prohibit him from doing. That was his philosophy in a nutshell. But the doctrine of the founders of our country, their idea was that the enumerated powers which would limit the president, or in other words, the president could do nothing except what the Constitution permitted him to do. So you see the difference in the contrast of those two philosophies. One guy thinks that, well, I can do anything I want to do except these things. And the other idea is, no, these things are the only things you can do. And so that was the big change of the philosophy that started creeping into our presidency. And Mr. Roosevelt, he wrote 1,006 executive orders, which was almost unheard of. Well, it wasn't almost, it was unheard of in that day. Most of the presidents before that had issued like 70 or 50, somewhere in that range, less than 100 executive orders. And Mr. Roosevelt, he jumps in there and starts writing executive orders like they're going out of style. And then, of course, World War II, or one rather, came in, and then Woodrow Wilson come in and enacted the war powers and followed suit with Mr. Roosevelt, and the Pandora's box was open. And see, this is the problem in our system today. Those Pandora box doors were open back in those days, and we've never went back and recorrected the compass that they'd set off. It's like taking a magnet and putting it next to your compass, where you think you're going true north, but you're actually about 15 degrees off. You're never going to get where you think you're going. And that's what's happened in our Constitution. It's just been these slight little things, and now we have representatives that come down from Jefferson City or Washington, D.C. It doesn't make any difference. And they've been through schools and programmed to be able to be a used car salesman, basically, and come down and sell the people on the ideas that they've come up with and convince them what they need to think about what it is that they're doing. And that is absolutely the opposite of the role of what a statesman is supposed to be. A statesman is supposed to be coming down and giving all the facts and all the evidence of an issue that is being debated or dealt with or considered in their post, and they're supposed to go back and represent the voice of the people that they represent. It's not about what they think we should be doing. It's about what the people think needs to be done, and that is the representation that they are to be taking forth. So we've got this opposite mentality in our political office because we've allowed our system to be twisted around to the point to where it feeds and fosters this type of a mindset. And the humanistic psychologists, people have got into the the doctrines that they're teaching, and they're twisting this stuff around, and it's a slight on words and a play on words. You know, I've been digging around and kind of in a rabbit hole, and I'll get to the amendments here in a minute, I promise. But I found three simple little things that will correct our not state but federal constitution, and they're simple little things, but they're nearly impossible to get done. I really reckon, but it's not that they can't get done. But we have all the people that with the power and the influence that like these things that are trying to protect them, and so it's going to be a matter of taking the cookie away from the kid, you know. And sometimes that's a hard thing to do. And just quickly, I'm going to probably do lots of podcasts on these things in the future, but I'm just going to briefly touch on them right now. If one of the things that we could do is one of the first amendments, well, the first amendment that was actually proposed by the original Congress for the Bill of Rights was a corrective aspect of population versus representation. I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but you can read it if you go back and look at the actual first document that was submitted to be ratified as our Bill of Rights. There was 12 amendments to it. Only 10 of them were amended. And then in 1992, the Second Amendment was amended, which became our 27th Amendment. And the First Amendment that they proposed is yet to be ratified. And that's dealing with the population as it grows. The state representatives grow with the population, and it's set up on what their idea was, it was set up on a percentage so it would slide with the population, and it would always be in retrospect to a adequate representation for an adequate population. Right now, the representatives have an average of, I'm told, I haven't checked the statistics, but I'm told 750,000 people in their districts. And that's just absolutely insanity. You can't keep up with that, nor can you be afraid of it. And it just opens up the door for the special interest groups and the private money to bribe the individuals into doing what it is that they want to do. And that's exactly what the forefathers said was the danger of not setting this up. And we had the president come in and froze the House of Representatives at the 400 and 38 members that it is now. And that just needs to be changed. That's one simple little measure. We need to unfreeze it. We need to set it up on a slide where people have proper representation. That'll correct a whole bunch of things that we got going on. The second correction is the state senators. They were appointed by the state legislators, and we had that changed. The 17th Amendment came in where we're voting for these people. That needs to be appealed. We need to get rid of the 17th Amendment. We need to go back to those state legislators being appointed because the senators, the Senate is the House of the states, and the House of Representatives is the House of the people. And that balance there, and we'll get into a lot of the details on that, has been messed up. And it also is a place for the special interest groups and all that bribery money to operate, where if you put that back like it was, it eliminates that problem. And the third little correction that was proposed by Thomas Jefferson was a 2/3 majority vote of both the Senate and the House of Representatives combined could overturn a Supreme Court ruling. And that puts a check and balance on the Supreme Court so they can be made sure that the things that they're doing are proper and within the right retrospect. And if we was to put those three measures back into our Constitution, which the last one with the judicial system never was accepted by the council. They rejected that idea, but it was proposed by Thomas Jefferson back then, so it's not a new idea. And all three of these measures, we have the arguments that Thomas Jefferson, if you go and read the Federalist Papers between Thomas Jefferson and Madison, they were back and forth about the Supreme Court and how they, Madison didn't think that they were ever going to have enough power to really do anything. But Thomas Jefferson's fear was that they would gradually keep encroaching because they had the power till they could legislate from the bench. And that's what we have, exactly what he was afraid we were going to have. And so we need to implement what he said was a check and balance to keep that from happening. So these are simple little things, but they're not little by any means. And they're not going to be easy. But there is a process in our Constitution for a convention of the states to get together and make some changes to our Constitution. And it can be done, but the reason it's never been done and successful before is because there's never been a specific outlined plan for them to accomplish, because that's what it has to be. You cannot have a convention of the states to go together with our Constitution to just sit down and rewrite the whole Constitution. That's not even an acceptable ideology by our forefathers when they put this in place. It was to make specific changes to specific problems with a specific amount of time. And so there must be a plan put together of exactly what is going to be changed. The people that come together in that convention don't have the power to rewrite the entire Constitution. They only have the power to correct whatever measure has been placed before them. And right here are three simple little aspects that need to be changed, whether it needs to be done in three separate conventions or whether it needs to be done all in one convention. That's a debate to have at another time. But the point is, these three little measures will eliminate the corrupt money in our legislative bodies. It will eliminate the need for term limits, because when you get rid of the money, the people will go ahead and they will come and go like they're supposed to, and we vote them out. And if you get the representation of the people back up where it needs to be, people will stop feeling like their vote doesn't count. They'll actually get involved, and they'll have a representation that's worthy to be representative of them. And they will also be accountable to their people, because there will be a small enough representative that the people will know who they are, and they'll be able to contact them and deal with them and keep things in line like it was supposed to be. Are there a lot of issues that come along with these things that'll have to be worked out? Absolutely. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm saying it's simple, just like the Word of God. Understanding and believing the Word, or understanding, I should say, the Word of God is very easy. It's very simple. Believing the Word of God, on the other hand, and living according to it is a whole nother thing, say. And this is no different. And getting into the amendments and things that are on our Constitution, or our constitutional amendments for the state of Missouri for the ballot that's coming up. One of those things, I'll jump to the end part of it, where it's dealing with John Ashcroft, who put on there, the Secretary of the State of Missouri, shall there be a convention to revise and amend the Constitution. And one thing I'll give credit to Mr. Deeds about is he was very accurate in his information at the town meeting down here in McDonald County the other day about this being a state issue. This is not the convention of the states that is being talked about in the federal Constitution. This is a state measure only, and it's dealing with a fulfillment of obligation to the state constitution, because they're periodically obligated to put this question on the ballot. And so that's the reason it's on the ballot, is because they're meeting their periodic obligations, okay? So that is a state measure only, and you need to educate yourself as to what's involved in all of that and the process that it would take. And I do not know on the state measures whether the requirement of specific detail is in place, or if they would have the ability to change the entire Constitution. Mr. Deeds acted like they could change the whole Constitution last night, but I haven't read it myself to see if there's a provision in there that requires, a specific outline of the duties that they will assume if that convention was to be established. So check that out. It's only on there because they have to put it on there. I'm going to go back to that first amendment of the Constitution they've put on there. It says, do you want to amend the Missouri Constitution to allow the General Assembly to override the current constitutional restrictions of the state investments by the state treasurer and allow the state investments in municipal securities, processing one of the top 5 high long-term ratings or the highest short-term ratings? State governmental entities estimate no cost of increase the revenue of $2 million per year. Local government entities estimate no cost or increase to revenue of at least $34,000 per year. Now, I have not been able to find anybody that can tell me why this provision was put in there to stop them from investing in this in the first place. Now, Mr. Deeds come down there and he gave us all the what fors of why he thought we ought to be voting for it, because they're going to be able to make more interest money and yada, 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 and the investment aspects of it. Now, don't misunderstand, they're already using the investment aspects in certain levels, but they are limited to what they can invest in, okay? My question about this is not the ability of the investment, but why have they been restricted from investing in municipal securities in the first place? And I've asked some people that are in the financial world, and believe you me, when it comes to the financial stuff, I'm full of ignorance. There's all kinds of room for improvement. So don't be taking what I say as the gospel. Dig it up for yourself. But when I read in this measure, it says state treasurer, which is a municipality, the government, investing in municipal bonds, to me, I see an immediate conflict of interest. I don't know whether there is or not, but the language says to me that we got a whole room of opening up here for corruption and everything else. So you're going to have to do your own research and find out there. I've not been very successful, to be honest with you. The people that I have talked to, they say there's very little pushback for this. They say it's got a lot of support. And does that mean anything? Well, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. On the amendment number 3 is for the legalization of marijuana recreationally. I'm not going to read the whole thing there, but you need to get that whole bill and read it. Regardless of what you think about the recreational part of it, there's all kinds of attached things to this bill that nobody's talking about. You need to look at the whole thing before you vote for it and see if everything in it is something you approve of, because if you vote yes on this amendment, you're going to be voting yes for some things that you're unaware of if you don't do your homework. Okay, that's the main thing I'm going to say about that. You guys all know me well enough. You know where I stand on the whole marijuana thing anyway. But that's not the point. It doesn't matter what I think about it. The point is there's all kinds of stuff attached to this bill. And for that reason, it makes it kind of dangerous all by itself. In the Amendment number 4, it says, shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to authorize laws passed by December 31st, 26 to increase the minimum funding for a police force established by a state board of police commission and ensure such police force as additional sources to serve its communities. State and local government entities estimate no cost of savings related to this proposal. Now, Mr. D's come in and he's trying to make this out to be a Kansas City issue only because Kansas City is the only one that has a state board of police. But that is only a factual statement in the current time of which we live right now. They're wanting to pass a law and place it on the constitutional authorities for the entire state. And my biggest argument with this is the fundamental basic principles of government is that local issues can be solved at the local level. Every issue should be solved at as close to the local level as possible. This situation that has been created in Kansas City was created by the local offices and voters of Kansas City, and the local voters and offices of Kansas City have the power to correct this problem. Therefore, it shouldn't even be a state legislative issue. It's a local issue, and the local people need to deal with it. If we go to passing laws and putting them in the federal jurisdiction or the state jurisdiction for issues on local matters, then we are violating the basic precept of our republic and our government. So you're going to have to look at that and weigh that out as far as the principle goes. This is a perfect example of some of the things I've been talking about these measures in our federal constitution. See, we created the 17th Amendment which puts senators being voted for in violation of the basic precepts of the protection of the principle that was bedrock established for our Constitution. This amendment does the very same thing. It violates the basic principle of our republic, which is the basic form of our government is every situation that can be dealt with at close to the local source as possible is dealt with at that point. It doesn't need to go to the state legislator. It doesn't need to go to the federal government. It doesn't need to be, they say, well, the crime rate's going up, and so it's a state problem because everybody's got to suffer with it. No, the city of Kansas City is creating a problem that, yes, we're probably other people are going to have to deal with it, but that's called the responsibility of being free. And that's why we have the right to bear arms. We have the castle law in the state of Missouri. We protect our property. And if the people would start standing up for what's right and living a moral and righteous life and dealing with these things, we would not be dealing with these issues. Bottom line. So that's a big, you got to have to check that out because that's a Kansas City thing that they're wanting to amend our entire Constitution because of a local issue in a local place. Now, this next amendment on Amendment 5 is shall Missouri National Guard be currently under the Missouri Department of Public Safety be its own department, known as the Missouri Department of the National Guard, which shall require to protect the constitutional rights and the civil liberties of Missourians. State governmental entities estimate no savings, ongoing cost of $132,000 annually, and local entities estimate no cost or savings. Now, I could not hardly find anybody that could answer the question that I had about this is why is the Department of Public Safety between the governor and the National Guard in the first place? Why was that provision put in place? Well, last night I finally found a guy that was involved in the National Guard, Mr. Mark, I can't think of his last name at the moment. I guess I'm not supposed to tell you. Anyhow, he explained to me that some of the situation here is going on, and this Department of Public Safety is a federal organization, okay? And FEMA and Homeland Security and the disaster relief programs and all those types of things are operating through that Department of Public Safety. And so this is where that authority was slid under because the state of Missouri has a limited number of these institutions that they can create or these organization titles that they can put out. And so all of these, the Highway Patrol and the National Guards and different ones were all kind of put underneath that umbrella, if you will. And so it's created a red bureaucracy between the governor, who is elected by the people of the state, and the National Guard. So it puts the federal government authority in between the two of them. Most states, if you get on the internet and read about this thing, you will find that most of the states of the union have already adopted a similar statute so that the governor is in direct response to the National Guard and the generals there, and it's the way it used to be. So this is really not a new amendment as much as it is a appeal of what was established, and it's reestablishing what was before they brought in this Department of Public Safety and inserted it in between our governor and our National Guard. So for that point, we're correcting a measure that has been falsely put in place. So that's a good thing. So we definitely need to put the chain of command back in place with our National Guard so that the governor has direct access to the generals and the generals have direct access to the governor, because that communication has been slowed way down, and there's a great big gap in between the two where they got to go through this third party to get approval to move and operate, and that just simply should not be the case. And it puts a measure in there that constricts the use of our National Guard for the civil liberties and the protection of the Missourians, and so those are all good things. So that's a good thing. Do your homework, check it all out, and see. But these are just some informational things that's hard to find. That I've spent quite a few hours trying to answer these simple questions that I've asked, and most of our public officials, unfortunately, couldn't answer the questions. I still have not found anybody that can tell me why the municipality was not allowed to invest in those municipal bonds. And, you know, I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to vote on it. I think you've probably already figured it out. But you're going to have to make up your own mind on what's most important. What's most important is whether we're being able to make some more money, or whether we're following a procedure that keeps the corruption out of our government. Because ultimately, the reason our government and the federal offices are in such horrendous shape is because of the corruption that we've allowed in. And we've allowed this in because of changing these measures that the original forefathers had thought through. And unfortunately, when we made these changes, we didn't think through some of this stuff as far as it should have been thought through. And it's created all kinds of problems for us. So we got to get back to the original pure form with the checks and the balances in not only our state constitution, but our federal constitution, you know. And like Mr. Deeds pointed out, I give him a, gold star on some of the things he's done. There's some things in the state constitution that probably need to be changed. That probably should have never been put into the state constitution. Some of these things that they're trying to propose right now should never be part of the constitution. They should be statutes and amendments that, are a little bit more easily modified and adapted to. And, there's not a problem with creating certain laws and things, but when you put it as an amendment to the Constitution, it becomes almost impossible to correct that course when you find out later on that it was a mistake. So we need to be a little more leery about what we're doing when it comes to these constitutions. If we are not careful, we're going to be right back under a dictatorship. Only it won't be a dictatorship of one king. It will be a legislative body or a judicial body or, some form of that is in control, which we're already seeing. We're already seeing that. So this philosophy right here of Mr. Roosevelt, this switching of the emphasis, I guess you can say, is one of the fundamental issues that we're dealing with. So if your state representative or your any representative is coming around and talking to you like a salesman, and he's trying to sell you on a pitch of his talking points that he's been sent down from Jefferson City or from the Washington, D.C. or from wherever else to, you need to set him down and say, no, I want the facts, and then I will make up my mind. Don't come down here telling me how I'm supposed to be thinking and what it is that you think I need to vote yes on and what you think I need to vote no on. I want the facts, and then I will tell you the way I want you to vote when you go up there. See? But that's not what we're getting. We've got to get back to having proper representation of the people, and then the people's voice will be heard rather than herded. And I can see we're fast out of time on that. So like I said, these next ones, podcasts, we're going to try to go over some of these things that I've dug up. They're not my ideas. They're not new ideas, but they are worthy of consideration. So check us out on the True Gospel Church Ministries website. truegospelchurch.org is the address there. Check us out on our page on Facebook with our present state versus history. I know that page has not been sending notifications out for some reason, so if you'll get right straight on the Spreaker podcast, Spreaker.com, our present state versus history, and follow that podcast, you'll get those notifications from there. Check out those links. We've added one for Mr. New on there for the information on the UN thing. And we put another link on there. Joe has been so gracious to work with that thing and put me a link on there for the Facebook live recording the panel that we did at the New Life Fellowship in Neosho. Check on that button there and check that stuff out. Help us spread the word. Please help us get this thing going out there a little bit more. Everybody that can follow these pages and share these things, it's much appreciated if you can. And if the Lord leads you to help us out with the finances, there's a button on there where you can donate and help us out. We appreciate that as much more than you know. As those of you that know me personally know that this technical aspect of things is a serious struggle for me. I go and I sit in those public meetings. It's not my best environment. It's not where I do the best. I have a real hard time when I feel like I'm being insulted, maintaining my composure. So anyhow, you got somebody in a room that echoes and they can't hear, and then my wife tells me all the time, well, you're yelling at everybody. Well, you know, I'm not yelling at them. They might think I am, but, you know, anyway. Have a wonderful day until we see you again on the pod.